to Deep Sleep Stories. Thank you to everyone who's been listening. If these stories help you relax or fall asleep, a short review, comment, or sharing the podcast with someone who might benefit is a simple and meaningful way to support the show so that we may continue to offer it for free. Now, take a slow, gentle breath and let's begin tonight's story.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, a quiet little place where your day can gently dissolve into dreams. Tonight, you will drift beside the very first sprout of spring, feeling the soft, patient magic of the earth as it wakes from winter's sleep. For now, there is nothing you need to do, no decisions to make, no tasks to remember. Just let your body settle where it is, supported and safe. Feel the weight of your head resting. Notice the gentle curve of your spine. Allow your shoulders to loosen and fall away from your ears, as if a soft, warm blanket of comfort were being wrapped around them. Take a slow breath in, letting it deepen just a little more than usual. Hold it briefly, then sigh it out, long and quiet. Let your exhale carry away the day. Again, breathe in gently, filling the lungs, feeling the air glide in. And breathe out, releasing tension, releasing thoughts, releasing effort. If your eyes are not already closed, you may let them soften and drift shut, as if heavy with the promise of sleep. Your jaw unclenches, your hands loosen, your legs sink into the mattress or cushions beneath you, supported from beneath by solid, steady comfort. Tonight's story takes place in the quiet space between winter and spring, where snow melts into song and the world remembers how to grow again. As you listen, you can simply rest, letting each word move past like a soft breeze. The story will hold itself. You do not need to hold anything. And now, as your breathing finds its own slow rhythm, the story begins. Somewhere in a valley held gently between low rolling hills, the last snow of winter lay across the land like a pale, worn blanket. For months it had softened all edges, muffling sound, covering stones and roots and fallen leaves in a quiet white hush. Beneath that stillness, deep in the soil, a tiny seed waited. The valley was an old one. It had seen countless winters come and go, had watched glaciers carve the hillsides and rivers change their paths. It knew the shape of every season, the flavor of every wind. In this valley, the trees stood like patient keepers of time, their branches bare and etched against the sky. Frozen ponds held memories of ripples and lily pads now sleeping under ice. The air was cold and clean, but somewhere within it, something new was stirring. The tiny seed did not know words like winter or spring or time. It only knew darkness and the soft, damp cradle of the earth around it. It had been there through the long, quiet, pressed gently by layers of soil and old roots, and the delicate lace of underground fungi. Above it, snow had fallen. Below it, the earth had held steady. And inside that small, unassuming shell, something had been quietly changing. A slow, secret readiness building, waiting for the right moment. Days passed, or perhaps weeks. The seed could not count them. It only felt small changes, almost too subtle to notice. The soil, once hard and cold around it, began to soften. Tiny droplets of melted snow seeped down, bringing with them a new, gentle coolness that did not sting, but soothed. Somewhere above, the muted rumble of water trickling through hidden channels began to echo faintly through the ground. The first sign came as a warmth, barely there at first, like a distant candle's glow. It did not burn or rush. It simply whispered through the soil, thin and delicate, touching the outer shell of the seed. The warmth lingered a little longer each day, spreading deeper, softer, until it reached the quiet heart inside. The seed responded without thinking, without planning. It simply did what it had been meant to do since the moment it was formed. The tiny spiral of life curled inside began to unfurl, cautiously at first. A faint crack appeared in the shell, hairline thin, almost shy. Through that crack, a thread of new root reached out into the darkness, feeling its way into the world. Above, the valley was changing too. The snow no longer lay smooth and untouched. It rippled and sagged in places where the sun found it, turning the once crisp crust into soft, uneven mounds. The days, still cool, began to stretch a little longer, like a cat waking from sleep. Pale sunlight filtered through the bare branches, glancing off the snow, off the ice, off the tiny streams that had begun to appear along the path of least resistance. At the edge of the valley stood an old oak tree, tall and broad-shouldered, its roots sunk deep into the soil like ancient, patient fingers. It had watched many springs arrive, had felt countless sprouts push up through the earth around it. This year, as the snow receded from its base and the ground darkened with moisture, the oak stood in quiet stillness, listening to the subtle stirrings beneath its roots. The tiny seed's root brushed against something rough and warm, one of the oak's thin feeder roots. The oak did not speak in words any more than the seed did, but there was a feeling, a sense of being noticed. The old tree recognized the touch of new life. It sent a faint pulse down through its own roots, a shared current of stability and calm, as if saying, "You are welcome here. Grow." Encouraged, the tiny root stretched further, anchoring itself more firmly into the soil. The seedling drank in water and minerals, drawing strength from the earth's deep, steady patience. Above it, snow slowly thinned, retreating in patches, revealing the ground beneath. Last autumn's leaves, once bright and crisp, now lay soft and dark, folding over one another like pages in a long-forgotten book. The shell fell away bit by bit, no longer needed. The seedling turned its attention upward. It could feel something there, above the soil, a pull, subtle but insistent. Not a sound exactly, and not a touch, but a direction. Up, toward warmth, toward light it had never seen, but somehow trusted. It gathered its tiny strength and began to push. The journey from soil to air was slow. The earth did not hurry, it had never learned how. The seedling moved by fractions by whispers, it pushed a slender, pale stem upward, pressing against the weight of soil. The ground parted reluctantly, then yielded, a grain at a time. Tiny stones shifted aside. Fine roots of other plants reached past without harm. The seedling pressed on. Above, clouds drifted across the sky in soft, thoughtful formations, carrying the last quiet flurries of the season. The air had a new scent, not quite yet the green sweetness of full spring, but something in between. Fresh, cool, and clean, tinged with the promise of growth. One morning, just as the sun crept over the rim of the hills, a small bump appeared on the valley floor, near the roots of the old oak. It was barely noticeable, just a slight rise in the damp, dark soil. But as the light grew, the bump shifted, cracked, and opened. From within, a tiny sliver of green emerged, tender and luminous against the muted earth. The first sprout of spring had arrived. It was small, so small that a passing bird would not have noticed it. Two delicate leaves unfurled slowly, trembling slightly in the cool air. They were a soft, fresh green, so new that they almost seemed light itself made into shape. The sprout stood there, just above the soil, its thin stem swaying gently with every breath of wind. The sun touched it carefully as if greeting an old friend. The warmth sank into the new leaves, soaking into every cell. The sprout responded instinctively, turning its face toward the light. It could not see the sky, not the way the oak could, but it felt the vastness above, the open space waiting to cradle it. Around the sprout, the valley was still mostly quiet. The snow clung stubbornly to the north-facing slopes, glittering faintly. Patches of ice remained in the shadows of stones and roots. But here, by the oak's trunk, the ground was bare, dark, and rich. The old tree's roots warmed the soil, sharing its stored energy with the newcomer. The wind, still edged with winter's coolness, passed over the valley, curious. It brushed the sprout gently, testing its balance. The sprout swayed but did not fall. In the whispering language of breeze and leaf, the wind murmured welcome, stroking the soft green with invisible fingers. Days unfolded like careful pages. Each morning the sun rose a little earlier, lingered a little longer. The sprout grew slowly, its stem thickening, its leaves widening like small open hands. Beneath the soil, its roots spread outward, exploring, learning the shape of the hidden world. They wound around stones, brushed against other roots, and found pockets of water, like tiny wells of cool, clear peace. At night, when the cold returned and frost still sometimes threaded silver patterns across puddles, the sprout tucked its leaves a little closer to its stem, conserving warmth. Overhead, the sky glittered with stars. Faraway lights scattered across the dark. The sprout could not see them in the way eyes see, yet it sensed their distant presence, a gentle reassurance that the world was vast and full and that it belonged within it. Nearby, under the melting snow, other seeds began to stir, inspired by the same warmth and the same pull toward the light. They would rise in their own time, unfolding their own small stories. But this first sprout was alone for now, a single bright note in the quiet symphony of the valley's awakening. The old oak watched over it. Birds returned one by one from distant places. At first, there was only a single call in the early morning, thin and tentative, testing the air, then another and another, until the dawn filled with gentle choruses, a layered song rising from bare branches and thawing reeds. The sprout listened, not with ears, but with its entire being, the vibrations of sound traveling through air and soil alike. Rain came, soft and fine, drifting down like a veil. It tapped gently on the oak's bare branches, on the surface of the shrinking snowbanks, on the tiny green leaves of the sprout. Droplets rested there, shining like small crystals, before sliding down to the soil below. The sprout drank in the moisture, its roots pulsing with gratitude. The valley changed day by day, yet the change was never abrupt. It was a series of quiet adjustments, of small softenings and slow unfoldings. The pond's ice thinned, cracked delicately, and finally gave way in patches, revealing water underneath that moved, however gently. Frogs, still sleepy, shifted in the mud at the bottom, feeling the return of liquid movement above. Where the snow had melted entirely, last year's grasses lay flattened, their color faded to pale gold and silver. The sprout rose among them as a contrast, a small ember of green in a world still remembering color. Insects began to stir. A lone early bee, confused and hopeful, buzzed low across the ground, pausing briefly on the sprout's leaf. Its tiny feet tickled the fragile surface. The sprout stood steady, sharing its small store of pollenless promise, not yet fully formed but already part of the larger dance. From time to time, clouds gathered and dimmed the light. The sprout did not worry. It did not know how to worry. It only knew how to reach, how to drink, how to rest. On gray days, it conserved its energy, standing quiet, leaves still and folded. When the sun returned, it opened again, eager, ready to receive. As the weeks moved softly onward, more sprouts appeared around the valley. Little blades of grass poked through near the stream. Tiny clusters of wildflowers pushed up through last year's leaves, their buds still tightly closed. Moss brightened into lush carpets on rocks and fallen logs, glowing in the damp shade, yet still the first sprout remained the oldest of the new. Just a little taller, a little stronger, its roots deeper and more entwined with the soil's hidden threads. The old oak, feeling the rise of sap within its own veins, understood the sprout's journey. Its branches, still leafless, stretched wide against the sky, catching light and wind, sending signals down the length of its trunk through its vast network of roots. In that underground tangle, messages moved like whispers, nutrients shared, warnings carried, comfort offered to the small and the new. One evening, as the sun slipped behind the hills and painted the sky in faint strokes of rose and gray, a gentle mist rose from the damp earth. It drifted low, swirling lazily around the base of the oak, the pond, the scattered stones. The sprout stood in the middle of it, half veiled, its green leaves beaded with moisture. In the mist, the valley felt even quieter, as though wrapped in its own soft cocoon. That night, the first stars appeared one by one, pricking the deepening blue. The moon was a slim curve on the horizon, not yet bright, but softly reflective. The sprout, bathed in silver light, seemed to glow faintly against the dark soil, like a small lantern rooted in place. Around it, the world breathed. The pond gave a slow sigh as ice finally released its grip. The wind, now gentler than it had been in the depths of winter, moved in careful currents, stirring the bare branches without shaking them. The earth itself seemed to hum at a low, steady note, a sound too deep for ears, yet present in the way everything held together. The sprout did not sleep the way creatures with hearts and eyelids do, but it rested. Its growth slowed into the cool dark, turning inward. It continued to the quiet work of making cells, of strengthening its stem, of weaving its roots into the unseen patterns below. It belonged there, in that small patch of soil, in that specific moment of the year's turning, and yet, in a way that could not be measured, the sprout belonged everywhere the season touched. On distant hillsides, other seeds were waking. On the branches of shrubs and trees, buds were swelling, tiny green tips forming beneath protective scales. In the nests of birds, soft spaces were being prepared. In burrows and dens, animals turned in their sleep, sensing the change even without opening their eyes. Spring was not a single day or a sudden burst. It was a gradual, patient unfurling, mirrored perfectly by the little sprout by the old oak's roots. Sometimes, as the afternoon light warmed the valley, a small figure would pass nearby. A fox, its winter coat still full but beginning to loosen, moved silently along the edges of the trees, its paws leaving delicate prints in the damp earth. It paused once, nose twitching near the sprout. For a moment, the fox and the tiny plant shared the same patch of sunlight, the same breath of air. Then the fox moved on, vanishing between the trunks. Another day, a deer stepped carefully through the thinning snow, its hooves soft against the exposed ground. It grazed on last year's grasses and the first fresh shoots, but it did not eat the sprout. Some instinct guided its mouth away. Perhaps it knew that yet more green would come, that it could wait. Perhaps the spirit of the valley itself had whispered to it, asking for this first sprout to be left untouched. Dusk after dusk, dawn after dawn, the pattern continued. Light and dark, cold and warmth, rest and growth. The sprout responded to each as simply as breathing. As its leaves broadened, veins fanned across their surface like fine, pale roads. Sunlight filtering through them created tiny shadows. on the soil below, delicate patterns that shifted with every tilt of the stem. When rain fell, the leaves caught drops and let them gather at the tips until they slid down, silver beads returning to the earth. In time, the sprout would become a plant with many leaves, perhaps with flowers, perhaps with seeds of its own. But that future was not here yet. The valley did not rush it forward. There was no urgency, no insistence. Only this moment, the first emergence, the steady reaching, the patient trust in the turn of the seasons. One morning, the air changed. A new softness threaded through it, warmer and more fragrant than before. It carried a faint hint of growing things, of damp soil and opening buds. The snow on the hills had retreated farther, now gathered only in shaded hollows. The pond's surface lay completely open, reflecting the sky in ripples of pale blue and white. At the center of the valley, a light breeze swept across the ground, moving in a slow, circular path. It gathered the scents of early blossoms, of moss, of melted ice, and traced its way toward the sprout. When it reached the little plant, it wrapped around it like a gentle embrace, rustling the leaves with care. In that moment, if one could listen in the language of leaves and wind, there was a feeling of recognition. The valley acknowledged its first visible sign of the new season. The sprout, in its tiny, humble way, was a promise carried into form. Not a loud promise, not a declaration, but a whisper. Life continues. Winter yields. Light returns. The old oak, now bearing swelling buds along its branches, felt the same truth. Sap rose within it, slow and sure, as if answering a call it had heard every year since it first rooted itself in that soil. The tree stretched a little taller, its unseen life mirroring the sprouts, each a reflection of the other at different scales. Around them, time seemed to settle into a gentle rhythm. The sky brightened, then dimmed. Shadows lengthened, then disappeared. Birds sang, then rested. Rain visited, then moved on. Every pattern repeated in its own soft cycle, each turn of the wheel, bringing the valley a little deeper into spring. The first sprout of spring stood steady through it all. It did not know that it was first. It did not understand that somewhere, someone might look at it and feel a quiet joy, a small spark of hope. It only followed the pull of the light, the call of water and soil, the invisible instructions written into its very being. Above, clouds drifted lazily. Occasionally, shafts of sunlight broke through, falling like gentle spotlights on certain parts of the valley. Sometimes one of these beams found the sprout warming its leaves, highlighting its simple, tender form, as if the world were saying, yes, here, this. Gradually, other sprouted plants grew taller around it. Small grasses swayed at its side. Tiny wildflowers lifted their colorful heads, first in pale, tentative hues, then in deeper, more confident shades. The sprout was no longer alone in its greenness. The valley floor began to transform from brown and white to a tapestry of living color. Still, The memory of being first lingered in the way it held itself, in the calm strength within its slender stem. It had survived the tail end of frost, the uncertain chill of early mornings. Its roots had anchored themselves during the quiet, solitary days when no other new leaves had broken through the soil. That gentle resilience remained with it, a soft weight in its core. Even as the season grew more vibrant with birds calling and insects humming and streams flowing more freely, the presence of that first sprout was like a resting note beneath a melody, steady, grounding, almost inaudible, yet always there. And when night came, as it always did, the valley glowed in its own way. Moonlight spilled across the slowly greening slopes. The pond shivered with reflected starlight. Dew formed on leaves and blades of grass, including those of the first sprout, turning each one into a tiny world that caught and bent light into silent rainbows. The sprout stood in its patch of earth, cradled between the roots of the old oak, under the patient watch of the sky. It did not seek anything. It did not reach for more than what was already being given. It simply existed quietly and fully in the exact place where it had taken root. The valley, in its ancient wisdom, understood the beauty of such simple existence. As the story of the first sprout of spring continues, its changes grow smaller, slower, almost imperceptible, like the soft fade of a song at the end of a long day. The stem thickens by the tiniest measure. The leaves deepen their green by the faintest shade. The roots spread just a little further, filling in the spaces between grains of soil, anchoring gently, never forcing, never taking more than they need. Around it, life continues, but in your awareness of this gentle place, everything begins to soften and blur at the edges, as if seen through the tender veil of morning mist. The sounds of the valley grow distant and muted. Birdsong becomes a faint, lilting echo. The breeze becomes a slow, barely there movement, like breath on the surface of still water. Even the subtle hum of insects dissolves into a low, steady background tone, simple and comforting. The first sprout remains, a small point of balance in the center of this quiet world. It sways slightly, its motion slower now, almost dreamy. The old oak stands behind it like a guardian, solid and unmoving, its presence both vast and gentle. The soil beneath is warm and welcoming, holding the sprout's roots the way a cupped hand holds something cherished and fragile. As the valley settles into a deeper calm, the light softens. Day eases effortlessly toward evening. The sky takes on the colors of rest, soft blue, lilac, the faintest blush of rose. Shadows lengthen, but they do not bring fear. They bring coolness, relief, a sense that all things are allowed to let go now, to release their effort and simply be. The first star appears above the hills, a single quiet point of light. The sprout does not turn its leaves toward it. It has no need. It simply stands, feeling the earth beneath, the sky above, the steady presence of the oak beside it. All around, the valley exhales a long, slow breath that seems to last forever. You might imagine that breath now long and smooth, as if the whole world were breathing with you. Inhale like the sprout receiving light and water effortlessly. Exhale like the earth releasing the chill of winter and settling into the softness of spring. Each breath gentler than the last. Each breath quieter. If thoughts pass by, they are like thin clouds drifting across the valley sky, noticed and then allowed to move on. The first sprout remains in its peaceful place, unaffected, simply growing at its own unhurried pace. In this resting moment, nothing is required of it. Nothing is required of you. The valley grows darker, but it is a kind darkness filled with the shimmer of stars and the silver wash of the moon rising higher. Dew gathers once more on the sprout's leaves, tiny droplets catching what little light remains. The air is cool and soft, like a blanket laid gently over everything. There is a sense in the quiet of the night that the story continues forever. The sprout will grow, more leaves will unfurl, other plants will join it, seasons will turn, summers will pass into autumns, autumns into winters, winters back into springs. But you do not need to follow all of those turns. Not now. They can unfold on their own, in their own time. While you rest, you may imagine the first sprout settling into silence, its movements so slow and small they feel like stillness. Its roots rest in the dark, calm earth. Its leaves rest under the cool touch of night air. The old oak rests too, its branches quiet, its long life humming softly beneath the bark. All of the valley rests, and as it does, you can let your own body sink a little deeper into comfort. Let your breath grow quieter, so quiet that it almost blends with the silent rhythm of the earth in the story. Muscles unclench, thoughts loosen like knots, coming undone, strand by strand, without effort. There is only the gentle image of a tiny green sprout, the very first sign of spring, held safely between the roots of an ancient tree, under a kind and watchful sky. Safe, quiet, peaceful. You can linger here as long as you like, in this soft valley where nothing is urgent, where every change is slow, gentle, kind. The first sprout will continue its patient growing whether you pay attention or whether you drift far, far away into sleep. If your eyes are not already heavy, they may grow heavier now. If your mind still turns, it may begin to turn more slowly, like a wheel, easing to a natural stop. The night deepens, the valley darkens. The first sprout of spring stands in its place, a small, steady presence in the great, quiet turning of the world. You are held, you are safe, you are allowed to rest. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.